Alright, hello everybody and welcome to I was going to say the probably, which wouldn't have made sense. I was going to say probably the last part of me reading Not Guilty by Briar, but it is going to be the last part. Yeah. Because there are currently no more parts of this. This is the last one that is currently there, and it's likely that I'm not gonna read any more of this, even if more parts come out, just because I just kind of want to leave it where it is. Let you read the rest of it. I might read the rest of it by myself when more parts come out, but not for video. We need to move on to other things. All of this has been amazing. Or this has been a very, very, very good story. So, I guess we shall start we shall begin with this final chapter, chapter 11 / chapter 10, Rising Energy. And apparently important things happen. And we're close to getting done with the 64,000 words in this. Oi. Alright, let us begin. After I have to deal with the fact that I just ate and now my mouth is weird. Anyways, when Akira woke up, everything was dark. Instantly, she felt awake. Panic, adrenaline, something defogged her mind as her eyes flew open. She took a few moments to take in her surroundings, breathing rapidly, unable to shake a feeling of apprehension. Her memories were foggy, but she definitely had a sense that she'd just been in considerable danger. But everything was quiet and still. Familiar bedsheets shifted against her arms. She could hear the faint hum of her printer. Someone had left her blinds open. There was more light than usual, from the street outside. It suddenly struck her that everything could have been a quickly fading dream. Hope soared in her chest, and she almost wanted to run to her brother's room like a child seeking comfort after a terrible nightmare. She began to sit up, pushing her hair out of her face. It seemed more messed up than usual, but then again, so did everything else. Her stomach doing a flip as something pulled on her neck, weighing her down. She glanced down, just making out the Millennium Puzzle in the half light. She bit her tongue, eyes darkening as disappointment settled in her gut like a stone. No dream, then. Tadako was still dead. Of course he was. It had been stupid to hope otherwise. She fell back onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, fending off the thoughts of Tadako that now threatened to swamp her, trying to recall the previous day. She remembered being at the Kaiba Corp headquarters in Merrick's office. She remembered him fighting someone who'd called him a murderer. She remembered him avoiding her gaze, unable to deny it. She'd cut her ties with Merrick and run off with the Millennium Puzzle. Then a woman with 2 glowing swords had tried to attack her and take the puzzle. After that, she remembered nothing. Maybe that last part was a dream after all. It makes even less sense than everything else. She slowly adjusted her position, sitting up properly as she had considered the possibility that all of that had actually just happened. It seemed so highly unlikely that she'd faced this woman and then lived. She'd clearly been ready to kill her, and seemed to have done it before. And Akira had no idea how to fight anyone, given that she'd forgotten that running very fast in the opposite direction was an option. There hadn't been any other way out. Also, the whole sword thing didn't line up with anything Merrick had said. She might not remember perfectly what all 7 of the Millennium items were, but she was pretty sure she would remember if he'd mentioned a sword. Wouldn't be the only thing he didn't mention. Then again, as strange as it all was, nothing else explained the lost time after she got off the bus. Something definitely happened. Whether or not she'd been attacked by a woman with magic swords, she'd ended up in bed, safe, but with no memory of the previous afternoon. What time is it? She hesitated before turning the lamp on her bedside, squinting for a few moments at the harsh light before glancing around for her phone. It was lying on her desk across the room. She quickly darted out from under the covers, snatching it up and retreating back to the warmth of the bed. A sheet of paper her phone had been sitting on fluttered to the floor. Akira watched it fall, blinking, and then unlocked her phone. 3:04 a.m., February 17th, one day after meeting Merrick. I don't know how it's like sort of light in the room when it's 3 a.m. because she's in Japan, not the Arctic. She took a deep breath. At least she hadn't lost any more time than that. Putting the phone down, she then reached for the paper, wincing as one of the corners of the puzzle jabbed her in the stomach. Take it off! Her fingers found the edge of the page, and she turned it over, seeing unfamiliar handwriting and a message written almost entirely in hiragana. She blinked, suddenly curious. Seeing her name at the top, her curiosity turned to dread. Cure Akira. Before that woman could attack you, I challenged her to a shadow game and won. You and the puzzle should both be safe now. We'll talk properly soon. The letter ended with a strange, ancient-looking character that she was sure she shouldn't know how to read, but for some reason she could. She knew it was a name, but she wasn't certain on how she should pronounce it. Its meaning was something like completion. I feel like that should be something that we might know, but maybe not at the same time. I don't know. How the hell do I know that? Carefully, stomach churning, she folded the note into a little square and stowed it away in a drawer, turning out the light and pulling the covers over herself to block out the light from the window. Maybe it would all make sense after she got some more rest. Or maybe she'd just hide in bed and never leave. Burying her face in her pillow, she wished, not for the first time, that the clock could turn back just a few days. She would trade all the dark magic in the world for her brother in an instant. Merrick woke up the next morning to the sound of the office phone ringing. He blinked blearily, rolling over, staring at the desk in the middle of the room as the shrill tone drilled into his brain. The phone continued to ring as he slowly processed what the noise was. It's probably not for me. Someone must have called it by mistake. The ringing stopped. Then a few moments later, it started again, just as jarring as before. He groaned. Merrick, shut that thing up. Yeah. He forced his heavy limbs to move, dragging himself to his feet and making a beeline for the office chair. He flopped into it, picking up the phone, half sprawled across the desk. Hello? Ishtar, is that you? He jumped, pulling the phone away from his ear, suddenly feeling significantly more awake. The voice was vaguely familiar, but difficult to make out over the phone. Who is it? It's Kaiba, the voice growled, at a marginally more reasonable volume. Merrick blinked slowly, a vague sense of confusion washing over him before his mind caught up with what was going on, gears turning slowly. Kaiba. That couldn't be right. He said Kaiba was in a coma. But I've woken up, and I have questions, like what in the hell you're doing sleeping in one of my offices? Who's dead, and where is Atem? Merrick opened his mouth, then closed it again. Apparently he was talking to Kaiba. Apparently Kaiba was conscious, he frowned. Weren't you in a coma? Answer the damn questions, Merrick. He blinked, feeling as though Kaiba ought to be doing the same thing, although he's too sluggish to argue. Sorry, what were they again? There was a long sigh. Why are you using Kaiba Corp as a hotel room? What's the deal with that card game where somebody died, and where the hell is Atem? Merrick frowned. Atem, I thought... Just hurry up and answer, Merrick. But I don't now, or get out of my damn office. Merrick swallowed. Bakuro had moved a little closer, listening in. The volume of the phone made it easy enough to eavesdrop. Merrick barely suppressed a yawn, picking himself up off the desk and leaning back in the chair. A duelist called Kyoru Tadako died about a week ago after he lost to Yugi. Immediately after, once he lost all his life points. I'm here to work out why, and Mokuba said I could stay. There was a brief pause as Merrick strained to hear Kaiba mutter something to himself, but he couldn't quite catch it. There was a slight crackle in the line before Kaiba spoke again, something in his voice slightly dangerous. And Atem, why the fuck is he not dead anymore? He frowned. I'm pretty sure he's not dead, Kaiba hissed impatient. I was going to duel him in the afterlife, and then he disappeared. So where the fuck is he? Merrick blinked a few times. He wasn't sure if he should even ask. Kaiba paid Atem a visit beyond the veil in order to duel him. Sure, I guess he I guess. He leaned even further back into his chair, staring at the ceiling. Kaiba, if Atem isn't dead, this is the first I'm hearing of it. There was a silence for a few moments, then Kaiba huffed a loud clattering noise just about deafened Merrick before the line went dead. Slowly, Merrick placed the phone on the desk. Kaiba wasn't in a coma, and he was convinced that Atem wasn't dead. Sure, that might as well be how his day started. Bakura was oddly quiet. He moved away from the desk, beginning to pace. Merrick ignored him, still reeling from whatever the fuck that was, thinking aloud. Maybe Ryu knows what he's on about. The spirit stilled for a moment. Ryu? He mentioned something about Kaiba excavating the puzzle a year ago. Could be relevant. He continued to pace. And Kaiba did talk about dueling Atem in the afterlife. I didn't mishear that. Bakura grunted. Yeah, that's what he said. Do you know anything about that? No, my soul didn't get much of an afterlife, so I hardly know what Atem was up to, he said quietly, unable to disguise his bitterness. Oh, sorry. Bakura said nothing, beginning another lap of the room. Merrick frowned. He's still staring at the ceiling. Do you think this could be relevant to Dodako? I mean, surely Atem isn't alive, right? That would be impossible. He was gone from the puzzle. He moved on. I guess we don't know what exactly happened with him in the puzzle and Kaiba last year, but I thought Ryu said he was still dead. We would know if he wasn't dead, and the idea of him suddenly coming back is just, it doesn't make sense. The spirit was unusually quiet. Merrick glanced over at him, surprised to see genuine concern written all over his face now. Everything about him tense. He sat up, frowning. Kura, are you okay? Bakura stopped pacing, giving Merrick a long, hard look. Yeah, I mean, it's not like anyone else has come back from the dead recently. There was a long pause, then Merrick's eyes widened, and something like fear stabbed through the pit of his stomach. Oh, fuck! It took all of 5 minutes for him to get his shit together, pull his hair back, and start calling Akira. He and Bakura had agreed that if Atem was back, his soul was probably in the puzzle again. While it was true that Bakura's soul hasn't returned attached to the ring, parts of his soul had been fragmented and scattered when he died anyway. What's more, the fact that he hadn't gotten afterlife meant his soul had been completely destroyed, so perhaps the Bakura that was here was now a blank slate. Or now was a blank slate of sorts, not attached to anything in particular. They could speculate for hours as to why Bakura had appeared completely separate from the ring, but no matter which way you looked at it, his connection to the ring wasn't as strong as Atem's connection to the puzzle. That, and if Atem's soul wasn't in the puzzle, then they'd have no idea how to find him. So they had no choice but to run with this theory for as long as they could possibly justify it. Damn it. There was a stupid fly. Anyways. Not that their plan to track down the puzzle was anything special. Right now it consisted of call Akira until she picks up, not the best plan they'd ever come up with, and honestly that was saying quite a bit. Its main flaw was that it was pretty unlikely Akira would pick up at all. The last time she'd seen Merrick, she'd found out he killed people, yelled at him, taken the puzzle, and run. And I should say ran. Then he hardly expected her to return his calls. Fuck. Alright. He paced back and forth, fiddling with the rod in one hand while he held his phone in the other. How long had Atem been back for? Presumably Kaiba had needed some time to recover from being in a coma for the better part of 6 months, but that would mean that if Atem had been in the puzzle for a while, Merrick had it for weeks and hadn't noticed. Then again, given his track record with noticing the presence of people's darker halves, that was perfectly believable. He cringed at the thought. Or Atem had only come back after Akira got the puzzle, which would mean that in the time Kaiba had woken up, learned vaguely about the Tadako situation, also found out that Merrick was living in one of his offices and called him. Although honestly, Kaiba was definitely enough of an unstoppable force for him to believe that too. He bit his lip, stomach churning. He didn't like this at all. You could try using the ring, Bakura said suddenly, if Akira is still not picking up. Merrick stopped pacing, glancing at the spirit warily. Didn't you say that was a bad idea before because it's so conspicuous? Bakura glanced over at the ring, which stuck slightly out of the top of Merrick's backpack. I don't think we have much of a choice if we want to make progress, Merrick nodded, reaching for it. Like the puzzle, there was still a cord through the hole at the top from when it was hanging on the museum display in Cairo. Holding the object itself, outlet. Oh god, okay. Brain. Merrick nodded, reaching for it. Like the puzzle, there was still a cord through the hole at the top from when it was hanging on the museum display in Cairo. Holding the object itself, maneuvering his hands out of the way of the spikes that hung from it, it felt smooth but almost unnaturally cold. As he moved to hold the cord and loop it over his neck, Bakura suddenly stiffened. Wait, don't put it on. Merrick frowned at him. How else am I supposed to use it? The spirit swallowed, something close to real fear on his face. You can just hold it. Trust me when I say there could be some weird shit in there. Dark shit. He blinked. Dark shit? Yeah, like burn your soul and body from the inside and leave you looking like a stick of charcoal, or corrupt your soul and make you want to murder everything. Dark shit, he said, his voice low. And we both know how the latter one goes with you. Merrick stiffened. The ring can do that? Bakura sighed, thinking, well, kind of. While I was in the ring, I was the one who could wield that power, and part of Zork's power was locked in the ring as well. But I always had the sense that there was something else, something older. Before I got my hands on it, there was some kind of darkness that even one of the Pharaoh's priests, Mahad, had to manage. He glanced at Merrick, his expression grim. I just wouldn't risk it. There's some line that you cross when you put it on, and I don't think you should cross it. Merrick nodded, his eyes wide, not sure what shook him more. The fact that the object in his hands was capable of that, capable of all of that, capable of corrupting his soul and creating something like him again, or the fact that Ryu had worn it for 3 fucking years, he swallowed. Yeah, that's a good idea. Carefully held the ring again, trying to recall how he'd seen Bakura using it before. The spikes were pointed away from him while he held it out in front of his chest. He took a deep breath, then focused on the ring. Tell me where Akira is. He stiffened as energy began to radiate from the ring, as intense as it was sudden. There was a sense of darkness there, but it wasn't overwhelming, so he continued to hold on to it, holding his breath as the spikes began to rise, angling themselves slightly to his right. His expression lit up and he carefully began to turn, watching with satisfaction as the ring spike stayed fixed on the same point. Nice, that narrows it down, I guess. Bakura nodded. Yes, but we don't know how far away she is. We can't exactly wander around following that thing until... He broke off as Merrick held up one hand, his attention suddenly snapping back to the ring. He could have sworn he felt something shift. Bakura glanced at him. Is everything okay? I don't know. I just felt something in the ring change. The spirit frowned, leaning closer, watching the spikes carefully. Oh, they're moving. Merrick blinked, peering more carefully at the ring as well. They looked almost static. They looked mostly static to him, but when he compared the position of the center spike to a spot on the floor, he realized it was moving, turning towards the left at a pace similar to the hour hand on a clock. Huh, I'm surprised you noticed that just by sight. Yes, well, it's not like it's the first time I've used this thing, and since you're standing still, she must be moving. The prongs will follow her unless you want to search for something else. He nodded, staring at the ring thoughtfully. And there's no way of knowing whether she's moving closer or further away, is there? No, if we knew the speed she was traveling, that might narrow it down, but there's no way of telling whether or not she's on foot. He muttered, It's a bloody pain. Merrick nodded absent-mindedly, feeling as though he was beginning to get an idea. He'd never formally taken math classes, but he had to teach himself more than a few things when he left the tombs and realized how much knowledge he was missing out on. And that was when he hadn't had much access to the internet. But if you focus on something stationary, Bakura glanced up at him, frowning, then the ring still doesn't tell you how far away it is because it's an annoying piece of shit. What's your point? Merrick smiled smugly. We could figure it out. It would just take a bit of extra work. The spirit frowned, looking confused for a moment. Then he blinked, eyes widening. Are you suggesting we do fucking maths? We don't know shit about maths. Do you have a better idea? Bakura opened his mouth and closed it again. Merrick grinned, putting the ring down and beginning to rifle through the drawers of his office of the office for some paper, pencils, a ruler, and tape. If there's ever going to be a math problem more unlikely than Johnny and his 19 bottles of dish soap, this would be it. After an hour of walking around with the ring hidden inside his coat and marking changes in the direction it was pointing, as well as attempting to work out what equations he was supposed to use while Bakura entertained himself by making cards fly around the room, whizzing them past Merrick's face whenever it looked like he was trying to concentrate. Merrick was confident he'd worked out roughly where Akira lived. Her house was probably in one of the suburban parts of Domino City, around half an hour away via bus, and while he didn't have the exact address, that would be easier to work out with the ring once they were closer. He explained the route to Bakura as they walked to the closest bus station. The spirit seemed as indifferent as ever. It was just as cold outside as it had been previously, although the layer of snow which had settled on the ground the day before had turned mostly to slush. A few inches of proper snow remained on the edges of the footpaths, but the rest of it was half melted, grayish, and riddled with footprints. Melted water trickled down the gutters, building up in puddles whenever there was a dip in the road. Merrick kept his hands in his pockets, tucking his nose into his scarf as they walked towards the bus interchange, anxiety simmering in the pit of his stomach as he tried not to think about the conversation he'd be forced to have when they found Akira again. He was probably going to have to tell her what had really happened when he said he'd killed people, and even though she seemed to have assumed worse, even if he wanted to correct her assumptions, talking about the past was still the last thing he wanted to do. He didn't want to think about it, even if it might redeem him a little in her eyes. He was almost glad to have the whole attempt situation take his mind off it. The bus finally pulled up. It was fairly full, without an empty pair of seats for both him and Bakura. Carefully, Merrick placed one hand on the rod and focused on Tinger sitting alone towards the back of the bus. You feel as though you know the woman across from you somewhere, and you ought to say hi. She sat up suddenly, looking startled, glancing at a middle-aged woman on the opposite side of the bus. She frowned for a moment, blinking, before slowly getting up, smiling at the woman. Oh, hi, I didn't see you there before. How are you? Merrick then shifted his attention towards the older woman. Her face is familiar, but you can't place why. The woman began to stammer a confused reply as the teen sat down next to her, and Merrick took her old seat. Bakura glanced at him, one eyebrow raised quizzically. Merrick met his eye. What? That sure was convenient. He shrugged. Yeah, it was. The bus pulled back out onto the road, and the pair of women proceeded to have an incredibly awkward conversation, both of them unable to remember each other's names, but feeling as though they must know each other from somewhere, with no escape until they arrived at their bus stop. Merrick grinned, letting himself enjoy this for just a little bit before his anxiety inevitably took over again. He might not be a crime boss anymore, and he might not think much of murder, but he could still be a little evil. The bus took them out of the city center down into the suburbs. Domino seemed to be very poorly planned, with the city's busy hub morphing into disorganized sprawl alarmingly quickly once they left the main road. Trees and flower boxes lined the wide footpaths, which were mostly empty by now. The houses tended to be smaller, though, and more crowded together. Merrick suddenly realized he hadn't been out of the main city before. During the Battle City tournament, that was where the duelists had gathered. And all of this was completely unlike Egypt, too, where everything was either empty desert or chaotic, overcrowded streets. This was the first time he'd seen any normal suburbia. He couldn't decide whether he liked it. Something about it was too normal, too calm. He was jerked from his thoughts as his scarf suddenly flew up and hit him in the face. He made a small noise in protest, pulling the scarf down, seeing Bakura's proud, wolfish grin. He glowered at him. Was that really necessary? Not really, he said, smirking, but we're getting close. Our stop's on the screen. Merrick huffed. Bastard. As they passed the stop before Akira's house, Merrick reached over and hit the stop button. The teen he brainwashed reached for it at the same time, looking relieved. The bus pulled into a stop, and Merrick gave the bus driver one last nod before stepping out in the cold, tucking his nose into his scarf. Bakura trailed close behind, giving the street a courteous glance as the teen went on her way, ducking into one of the houses across the road. Bakura glanced at Merrick. Ring? Ring. Merrick pulled the ring out of his backpack, focusing on the location of Akira's house once more. The needle swung around to the left. Merrick looked at Bakura. I guess we follow it. Even if Akira's not home, we could wait. He broke off, tightening his grip on the ring as he felt something pressing against his back grow warm. Unthinkingly, he braced himself against a tree, remembering the other vision of the funeral. The necklace. Shit. His vision flashed white, and a hazy image appeared. Akira, in a police interrogation room, still wearing the puzzle opposite a young police officer with soft dark hair swept forward. Takeda, and then the vision was gone. Merrick. Bakura was frowning at him. Merrick took a deep breath, his mind racing. The necklace had just shown him Akira wearing the puzzle being interrogated by Takeda, who already thought the puzzle was important, who still had Yugi. Fuck. But then he didn't know when that was, whether it was in the past or the future or now. Merrick, are we going? Bakura cut into his thoughts, frowning, managing to look both impatient and concerned. Merrick rounded on him. How far away from here is the police station? What? How far away is the police station? He repeated, a dangerous edge to his voice. Bakura straightened slightly, his eyes narrowing, instantly more alert. From here, I'd guess of around 2 hours on foot. We were closer when we were at Kaibacorp. Merrick nodded, letting out a long breath, thanking the gods for Bakura's uncanny sense of direction. His old habit of having his guard up constantly, noticing everything, made him good at remembering places and distances and back streets to escape through if things went wrong. Not that changed the fact that the police station was now miles away, but at least they knew where they were, and they could always check the direction with the ring. He tightened his grip on the ring again, focusing on it. Show me where the police station is. It swung all the way around to the left now, adjusting so that it pointed behind him when he turned to follow it. He took a deep breath, afraid of the answer, but asking anyway. Show me where Akira is. The needle swung to the right, but it was moving steadily back around. He felt his shoulders relax as relief washed through him. They still had time. Maybe. We have to go. We have to try to beat her there. Merrick, what? He cut him off, fixing him with an intense stare. I had a vision. The necklace gave me a vision. Takeda was interrogating Akira, and we have to go. Bakura's expression instantly became more alarmed. A vision? Is that happening now? No, I just checked, and Akira's not at the police station yet, but she could be on her way. Bakura scowled, glancing down the road. Well, the bus going back the other way left as we were arriving, and you said before that they only come every half an hour. It would be faster than walking, but still not ideal. Merrick wasn't listening. He scanned the driveways of houses around them until he found the kind of vehicle he was after. Black, sleek, with a powerful-looking engine and plenty of exposed body components. He grinned, eyes lighting up. We don't need to wait for the next bus. Bakura frowned at him. Merrick, I just said. He trailed off, following Merrick's gaze. Oh. Merrick smirked. Really, Kura? I thought stealing a vehicle would have occurred to you before me. The spirit glowered at him. Me too. Don't you dare mention it again. I thought you were done with crime and stuff. Wordlessly, he unzipped one of his pockets of his backpack and rummaged inside. Then he pulled out a short piece of wire, smirking. Old habits die hard, I guess. Bakura sighed, looking extremely tired, giving the other duelist a semi-affectionate eye roll when he thought he wasn't looking. Taking a deep breath in, Merrick crouched down in front of the motorcycle, getting to work. Hang on, Akira. I'm coming. Please, gods, don't let her incriminate anyone in the meantime. Oh. Goodness. You weren't at the memorial. Takeda tensed up, gripping the steering wheel a little more tightly, meeting her eye through the rearview mirror. Akira was sitting in the back of the police car, a mixture of concern and curiosity in her eyes. She'd always had that look about her when she was around him, but now concern seemed to be heightened. While he appreciated the concern, he would rather not talk about it. He got Akira into the police car to take her to the station and ask her about the pendant, which he'd seen around her neck on some security footage. All day he'd been searching, and he had an AI searching through every type of footage the police had access to for signs of the pendant, and it had turned up in the last place Takeda had expected, in live CCTV footage around Akira's neck. He just wanted to talk about that when they reached the station. He didn't want to talk about the memorial service because that would involve more feelings than he was prepared to feel at the moment. Not that she wasn't ready to ask why he hadn't come. She knew how close he'd been to Tadako, but as much as he wished he could have come, he knew that as long as what really happened to Tadako remained unknown, he wouldn't get any real closure. And he couldn't think of anything worse than enduring stares from strangers who didn't know why he was there, or lying to said strangers about how he knew him should they approach him. Tadako would understand that. Would understand? Would have understood? Either way, talking to Akira about any of this was even less appealing than going to the memorial had been. I was busy, working on Tadako's case, he said finally, carefully. That wasn't a lie anyway. He'd arrested Muto that morning. Akira nodded, brushing a strand of hair out of her eyes. Right, whatever helps you cope, I guess. She said quietly, grimacing. He bid back a sharp reply. Bold of you to assume I'm coping, swallowing. Akira would know as well as anyone how difficult it was to cope at the moment. Yeah, something like that. They lapsed into silence. Takeda tried to focus on the road in an attempt to shake some uncomfortable feeling he couldn't quite name. Apprehension, maybe. It was one thing to investigate Tadako's death and talk about it with his colleagues while being able to put his feelings and his grief aside, hidden, but it was another thing entirely to be discussing Tadako's death with his sister, who had a closest to Tadako that everyone else at the police station lacked. It was harder to compartmentalize his theory about what happened and keep it separate from his grief while he was with someone who must share that feeling. It felt far more personal, and something about that scared him. So to distract himself, he thought about the case. Tadako's sister, along with the pendant, which almost certainly had some of the answers that he was looking for, were only a few feet away. At the thought, he instantly felt more relaxed, beginning to smile. A day ago, the idea of even laying eyes on the pendant had been unthinkable. Theories and speculation as to what the pendant might be able to do and what its role was ran through his mind as they had been all morning. He'd accepted about 12 hours ago that magic was some kind was probably real and probably involved. If the pendant was a magic item, that would explain a few things. He still hadn't mentioned magic in any kind of official police report, though, that like crossing the line, and he wasn't sleep deprived enough to do something that reckless yet. Either way, Akira had the pendant. If she could tell him anything about it, that would be a huge breakthrough. Then maybe I'll be able to persuade the prosecutor. So what is it that you need to ask me about that we can't just do at home? Akira said suddenly. Takeda almost jumped, pulled abruptly from his thoughts. It took a moment for him to register the question. Or, it's not that. I just like to have a recording so I can check things later. Oh, she seemed surprised. I mean, I'm just not sure what I know about Tadako that you don't, aside from little details. He blinked. You've known him your whole life. There must be some things. Yeah, but he liked you, and he was an open book. He didn't hide anything from people, except... She trailed off, shrugging, smiling at him a little sheepishly. You know. Takeda swallowed, nodding. Yeah, right, which is why I'm not actually bringing you in to talk about him. Oh, Akira paused, surprise growing a little tense. Then what do you need me for? Did she really not know how the pendant was important, or was she just playing dumb? Takeda blinked, then glanced back at the road. Oops. Something else. We'll need to talk about it when we get there. I guess I'm hoping you can fill in some of the gaps that Muto refuses to, he said carefully. For a long moment, Akira was silent. Takeda frowned, glancing in the rearview mirror to check that she was all right. Something about her seemed different, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Her posture was stiffer, jaw tight as she pulled her hair back as well as she could, it being so short. She met Takeda's eye, her gaze more intense than he'd ever seen it. What about Muto? Takeda blinked. He wasn't sure why Akira was that interested in Muto, but that reaction combined with her having that pendant was a sure sign that he was definitely onto something. What do you mean? You know him? He looked back at the road, keeping his tone light. Akira swallowed, looking uncomfortable. No, do you? You could say that. He's under arrest, and I've been interrogating him for the past day or so. Glancing back at the teenager, he tensed up as he saw her expression. Her eyes narrowed, fists balled as she glared out the window with barely disguised fury. For Tadako's murder? she said quietly, her voice more controlled than he expected. Takeda nodded, his skin prickling, unable to shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe he was just unnerved by Akira's sudden anger, but the air felt thicker. He swallowed, uh, pushing his anxiety, summoning his best deadpan. No, we arrested Muto for tax fraud, and I just thought I'd bring you along to the station to have a chat. Yes, for Tadako's murder. It took every ounce of his fiber to stop his voice from breaking as he finished that last sentence. Akira swallowed. Right. They drove on in an awkward, heavy silence, but soon enough Takeda's racing thoughts distracted him from it. Something seemed undeniably off about Akira now. He might not have known her well before, but he was sure that when he'd encountered her previously, she'd been more mild and soft-spoken, with a kind of warmth about her. But now her eyes had a fire in them, a burning anger that seemed to be connected to Muto. As far as he knew, however, she shouldn't have any prior connection to him, aside from the link between him and her brother's death. Besides, Muto had insisted that he had nothing to do with Tadako or anyone who knew him, which was one of the few things that had completely checked out. His eyes darted to the pendant for a moment before returning to the road. That must be the connection. Muto had it during Battle City, and Akira suddenly had it now. It must mean something. The only question was what. Suddenly Akira spoke again, her voice low with an almost dark quality. And do you seriously think that just because Yugi was the one dueling Tadako when he died, it's somehow his fault? You really believe it's that simple? Yugi. Akira had no reason to call Muto Yugi. Takeda narrowed his eyes. No, I don't think this is simple at all. Carefully, Merrick put the wire into two parallel ports connected to the ignition, hearing the bike click on. Getting to his feet, he swung his leg over the seat, grinning as he gave the bike an experimental rev, relishing in the familiar feeling of the leather seat and the slight bounce as the suspension mechanism dipped under his weight. He reached for his phone, opening a map and working out where he was going as rain began to fall from the sky. Light and misty at first before turning into freezing sleet. He hunched over the screen, trying to shield it from the wet as he oriented himself and memorized the route, quickly losing feeling in his fingers as cold slush settled on his hands, melting on his skin. As soon as he had his bearings, he returned the phone to his bag, glancing at Bakura. You can follow me at any speed, right? Or do you need to sit on the back? Bakura glared at him. I can keep up. Oh my god. Okay. Merrick nodded, gave the engine cup a couple more revs just for fun, then drove out onto the road. Helmet be damned. He'd rather brainwash law enforcement out of arresting him for some minor driving offense and let Takeda work out what the deal was with the Millennium Puzzle. The police station was only 20 minutes away by road, but with every passing second, Merrick grew more and more worried. God, what if she'd said something wrong already? What if she's saying it now? What if I'm too late? What if Takeda was already onto me? What if the rod doesn't work again? He was forced to concentrate on the road as he drove out onto the main street, barely legally weaving through the traffic. Bakura floated alongside him, almost impossible to make out through the sleet and exhaust smog, but somehow easier to spot in the reflections of car windows and puddles in the gutters. He came to a stop a block away from the station, pulling into an alley. He glanced around behind one of the bins, wondering for a moment whether Sekhmet wandered this far. She didn't seem to be around. I'll have to go back to that spot from yesterday later. Putting the cat out of his mind, he pulled the ring out from inside his coat, holding it gingerly. The spikes swung, the outermost ones clinking against each other. He adjusted his grip, and then took a deep breath in. Show me where Akira is. The spikes suddenly became erect, pointing directly towards the police station. Merrick bit his tongue. Bakura, beginning to look more corporeal again, stared at them. That's where Akira is? Yeah, the police station. He nodded, meeting Merrick's eye, his gaze steady. Okay, what do you want to do? The duelist paused, glancing around the alleyway. It wasn't such a bad spot to hide while he used the rod. I'll stay here and use the rod on Takeda. Can you keep an eye out? Bakura nodded, smirking. Can I keep an eye out? Can I, the king of thieves, steal her souls? Yeah, whatever, just... Merrick broke off, taking a deep breath. Fuck, okay, thanks. The spirit rolled his eyes, turning to face the main street. Hide somewhere in that alley. If I shout, run. I'll buy some time for you to sort your shit out by making the light fittings in the police station swing or something. Merrick made a noise in his throat that could have been a laugh, but he was far too tense for that. That's a terrible plan, Kura. Do you have a better one? Then fuck off and get that rod working. Interesting sentence. Merrick swallowed, unable to think of a good retort and growing more anxious by the second. He quickly checked the street to make sure no one was watching him before slipping into the alleyway, pulling up the hood of his coat. Nestling himself between a couple bins, he held the rod in both hands. Then closed his eyes, concentrating, tapping into the rod's power, reaching outwards. First, he glimpsed into the minds of the people around him. Kura's was moving almost too fast for him, running through what they'd do if things went wrong, with the option of killing Takeda currently at the forefront. Merrick took a deep breath, blocking him out, skin prickling uneasily. Gods, don't let it come to that. Takeda's one hell of a problem, but I'm not going to kill him. Gods, no. He carefully searched and then discarded the surface thoughts of strangers, taking a little bit of time to get used to the rod like this again. At the very least, it was reassuring that it was working after the encounters with both Taylor and Astart. It seemed like the fact that it didn't work on them had more to do with them than it did with him. He hadn't decided whether or not that was a good thing. Then he tried to shift the rod over to Takeda. Nothing. His eyes flew open, shocked at the sudden feeling of rejection, as though something had repelled him. He became aware of the coldness in his hands again, frowning as he pulled the sleeves over him, shivering. There shouldn't be any issue. He'd used the rod on Takeda before. He'd used the rod to target people at distance before. A feeling of dread began to pool in his stomach as he closed his eyes, trying again, holding his breath. Please, gods, let this work. Still nothing. He gripped the rod more tightly, panic and frustration slowly setting in. If he could just get into Takeda's head, he could know what was going on. If he needed to, he could control him, make him forget anything that needed forgetting, make him free Yugi and abandon this whole thing. Should have done that when I had the chance. I was worried it aroused more suspicion, but at least it would have prevented this. He tried again, resting his forehead on his knees, his face centimeters away from the rod, its golden glow illuminating his features, but still no luck. Pushing down the panic rising in his stomach, he took a few moments to try and get a feel for whatever was obstructing him. It was different to the last couple of times the rod hadn't worked. Before, it had simply felt like the rod didn't have any effect. Now its effects should be working, but they were being blocked as though by something, as some kind of protective force or shield. The puzzle, he realized, his breath catching in his throat, his eyes flying open. The puzzle used to protect Yugi like that. Oh my goodness. Oh. Sorry. Just needed to stretch or something. Oh, my throat hurts, and that it's not good. It's really not feeling that great. Hold on. All right. So, the puzzle's ability to protect its user from harm and magic wasn't something he discovered until he tried to use the rod on Yugi earlier on in the Battle City tournament. When he'd been preparing to duel him at the docks, his original plan had been to brainwash Yugi and or Tem, it hadn't really mattered, into walking to the docks and shackling him so the battleground for his duel against was the first thing he saw when he regained awareness, disorienting him as much as possible. But the puzzle had stopped him, blocking the rod's magic. It had a distinct energy, the perfect balance of light and dark, and a sense that it was as old as the gods, which he supposed the magic behind all of the items was. This felt the same. He took a deep breath, considering how this could possibly begin to make even one iota of sense. Could the puzzle be responding to being so close to Yugi? Can that activate its powers? Maybe it wasn't impossible. Yugi's connection to the puzzle was strong, and it wouldn't be the first time a Millennium item had reached out to its wearer. That ring had for Ryu, apparently, but then again, that might have been that might have had something to do with the spirit inside. And Atem might be inside the puzzle, and he's calling out to Yugi somehow. Except that it was Takeda who he couldn't use the rod on. Not rug. What the hell am I saying? Another wave of panic gripped him as he realized what the implication of that was. Takeda must be using the puzzle. There must have been more to him than Merrick had realized. What if he had been playing dumb about the items the whole time? What if this was part of some plan for him to get his hands on them? What if... Merrick, how are you going? Bakura jumped as he heard Bakura next to him, jolting him from his thoughts. Not good. I can use the rod on everyone around us, but it's not working on Takeda. I think the puzzle's repelling me, which means Takeda must have it. He glanced up at Bakura, his eyes wide, voiced quiet, which would be really, really bad. The spirit frowned. Wait, go back. What's this about the puzzle? One of its abilities is to protect whoever's using it from the other items. I'd forgotten, but if that's happening, then someone must be using it. Bakura swallowed, grimacing. Are you sure that's what it is? It's not a problem with the rod? I'm positive. I know what this feels like. Meaning someone's using the puzzle, Bakura has confirmed. And Merrick nodded. His spirit narrowed his eyes. Concentrating, gears turning. You said we were here because the necklace showed you that Akira was with Takeda at the police station. Did Takeda have the puzzle in your vision? Meaning... Oh, Jesus Christ. Merrick shook his head, feeling himself relax slightly, daring to feel a sliver of hope again. Akira had still had the puzzle in the vision, but we don't know whether or not that's already happened. We could be too late. No, but try using the rod on Akira. Merrick hesitated, then nodded, closing his eyes, adjusting his grip on the rod. It was now slick with water, as what had previously been hazy, icy sleet turned into drizzling rain. He focused again, reaching for Akira. He was blocked by the same force. He glanced at Bakura, with his forehead seized with worry. Nothing. The puzzle's protecting her too. I guess so, he said, his mind racing. He didn't know what that meant. He didn't know what any of this might mean. But if he couldn't get to Takeda or Akira, he was both in the dark in terms of what was happening and unable to stop it. He felt his chest begin to turn itself into knots as he tightened his grip on the rod, gritting his teeth. Why would the necklace give him a vision like that if there was nothing he could do? A feeling of powerlessness swept over him, and he bit his lip as he got to his feet, steadying himself against the wall. Suppressing a shiver. No, he refused to feel powerless. He'd spent something like a week without being in control of his own body, and even then he managed to get shit done. If we can't find out what's going from here, we have to go in there. Bakura frowned. What, Merrick? This is a police station you're talking about. You can't just wander in there and do what you like, especially if the rod isn't working on people inside. But I can't just wait here not knowing, he insisted. Takeda might have the puzzle, or Akira might be telling him about it, and we can't just do nothing. The spirit stepped in front of him, placing his hands on his shoulders, gazing at him intently. Merrick, listen to me. Let me finish. I'll go in. I'll find out what's going on. I'll find whoever's using the puzzle, and no one will see me. But you have to stay here, okay? He felt something in his stomach clench. It made sense. It was the best plan they had, but he was dreading being left here on his own, waiting, not knowing. He hated being in the dark, figuratively as much as literally. He swallowed. Promise me you'll be quick. I will. It's not like I'm able to do much more than look anyway, the spirit smirked, although I suppose I can make the lights flicker on and off. He sighed, trying to relax, taking a deep breath. Yeah, right. Okay. Bakura studied him, frowning. Are you alright? I'll be fine, he said, trying to keep his voice from shaking. I'm just worried. The spirit grimaced. Yeah, well, I'll be back. And then he vanished. Merrick let out a long sigh, leaning back against the wall, staring up at the top of the building on the opposite side of the street. Through the rain, it was grimy and with dust and mud and bird shit. Everything could be going horrifically wrong, but there was nothing to do but wait, staring at bird shit. Anxiety gnawed at his stomach, his heart racing. He hated this. He wasn't sure why not being in control of things got to him so much. He didn't know if it always had. Maybe it was Maybe it was why he'd been drawn to the rod, or maybe it was because every time he relinquished his control, that's when people got hurt. That's when he got hurt. He had no control when his father had subjected him to the lifestyle and rituals and tomb keepers. He had no control when his father was killed. He had no control during the Battle City finals when Mai was in a coma. And he barely had enough power to stop the other him from killing Rashid. Get off your high horse, Merrick. You were ready to kill Junoichi and Anzu, and you treated Rashid like shit. He huffed, scowling. Even when he did have control, he still managed to fuck everything up. Slowly, warily, he put away the rod and slunk out from between the bins, wandering back to the main street. So at least he wasn't lurking in a dark alley. He adjusted his coat and then leaned against a telephone pole, trying not to draw attention to himself. If he folded his arms, he could pretend his hands weren't shaking. That didn't fix the clench of his jaw or the tightness in his chest, but it was something. There was nothing else he could do. So he stood in the rain, confused and anxious, glaring at nothing in particular. And he waited. That's the end of the chapter. Oh my god. Oh boy. So that is it, because there is no more chapters. Oh my god. I do want to read more of this, but I really, like, I don't feel like I can do more videos of it, especially not now, because there are no more parts of it, but I really want to read more of this, because this story has been amazing so far, and this is, like, the most ridiculous cliffhanger, like, what is happening? So, yeah. Maybe by the time that this video is uploaded, whatever that is, there will be a new part out, but I won't have read it. You can go read it, obviously, but I won't have read it for this channel. I'll be doing other fan fictions. Yeah, next time we'll be doing another fan fiction. I don't know what it is. It won't be this one, obviously. But I don't know what it is, because it would probably be the same one that we did the time before this, after the previous episode of this one. After the previous episode of Not Guilty, between, this one and that one, I would have started a new one. I don't know what it is, though, because I haven't started it. At least for myself. It'll probably be done by the time that, this gets uploaded, obviously. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'm just like, I need water or something. My throat hurts. Probably from me talking nonstop for like at least 2 hours today. And yeah, I want to just do anything else right now. So that'll be it for today. Next time we will come back with whatever other fan fiction. It might still be something that was requested by somebody. I don't know. That's about all I got right now.